Ancient Eastern cultures throughout time understood the sacred science and the power of the individual energy centers of the body. Of course, they had different names for them that were related to the contemporary language of that specific time. For example, I'm sure you've heard the word chakra, but I question how many people truly comprehend what that word actually means. Fast forward to today, and there are many misinterpretations and misunderstandings of that simple word, as well as many others, which both weaken the meaning of it and reduce our ability to interact with these mystical centers. In this episode, I'd like to take you on a journey into the mystery of your body and offer you a fresh new understanding of the different energy centers to show you how you can create coherence in them, just like you learned to create coherence with your brain and with your heart. In the previous episode, we talked about heart and brain coherence and all of its wonderful benefits. Now, let's build on that understanding further so you can learn how to reprogram your autonomic nervous system along with these individual energy centers, otherwise known as chakras, to create homeostasis and balance and restore health back into your body. Let's start with a brief review of the anatomy and physiology of your brain and body. Each one of these individual energy centers of the body have their own frequency, they carry their own message or their own intent because all frequency carries information. They have their own individual consciousness. They have their own glands, their own hormones, and their own chemistry, as well as their own individual little brains. Now, the sexual glands or the sexual organs are related to the first center, the digestive glands, the second center, the adrenal glands, the third center, the heart and the thymus, the fourth center, the thyroid and the parathyroid glands, the fifth center, the pineal gland, the sixth center, and the pituitary gland, the seventh center. In addition to having their own hormones and glands and chemistry, they have their own individual little brains. Inferior mesenteric plexus, superior mesenteric plexus, solar plexus, or what we call celiac plexus, heart plexus, thyroid plexus, pineal gland, and pituitary gland. And each one of these individual plexuses of nerves is a cluster of neurons that would be like an individual brain. And whenever energy is moving into neurological tissue, we begin to create mind. So think about this. When energy moves into your first center, a certain set of glands, hormones, and chemicals are released, and it begins to produce its own energy. And when energy is activating that neurological tissue, that center has its own individual mind. By the same means, when you're reacting to someone or something in your life, or you have to use your will to overcome certain circumstances in your life, you activate and put energy in your third center. You begin to secrete certain hormones and chemicals, as well as different glands becoming activated. And this center then has energy in it, and when the neurological tissue becomes activated, this center has a mind of its own. By the same means, when energy moves into your heart, you tend to be more loving, more selfless, more giving, more caring, more trusting, more creative, because it has its own consciousness. And when energy moves into this center, we behave in different ways. What most people don't know is that all of these energy centers of your body are under the control of the autonomic nervous system. Now remember, autonomic means automatic. In other words, the autonomic nervous system is part of the brain called the limbic brain, and its job then is to automatically take care of balance and equilibrium in the body. It controls blood sugar levels, hormone levels, it controls body temperature, and all of that takes place beyond the conscious mind. I want to review something very simple. We have a tremendous amount of energy that exists in our first center. Think about this. There's enough energy in the first center of a human being, or many mammals, to create life. Most people have been programmed into believing that energy can go in one direction, that we release that energy out. But now let's take a journey up the spine, all the way to the brain. When energy is activated in the first center, that's creative energy. And when that energy can move into the second center, if we feel safe in our environment, and there's food, and there's shelter, and there's protection, and there's family, and we have networks. Energy naturally moves into the second center, and this center is about consumption, elimination, metabolism, breaking down food, homeostasis, and balance. Now, when the environment becomes unsafe, and we perceive a threat or a danger, or some challenging situation, energy moves into the third center. And now we need our will, and we need some power, become empowered to overcome the conditions in our environment. If we're successful in overcoming those conditions, energy naturally moves into the fourth center, and we love our life a little bit more. We love ourselves a little bit more. We feel more whole. We feel more complete. We feel more present. And of course, we have to then express our greatest understanding. We have to express our greatest expression of love or truth, and energy moves into this center. If we can articulate and explain that greatest understanding, energy will move into the sixth center, and latent systems of the brain will begin to become activated, and we will begin to broaden our spectrum of reality. In other words, we'll begin to see more the way the reality really is. Some veil or some conditioning will be released. And if energy makes it to the sixth center, it'll move into the seventh center, and it will begin to create harmony and balance in all of these individual centers. And then there's another center right above the head. The Egyptians called it the Ka, and we'll call that the eighth center. And when energy moves all the way up to the top of the brain, if we feel worthy enough to receive, now all of a sudden now we open this eighth center, and opening that eighth center allows the door for us to begin to download information from the field or from the cosmos. So it makes sense then that when people have traumatic events in their life, think about early childhood abuse or trauma or shock, it makes sense how energy can get stuck in each one of these energy centers, and it never actually continues on in making its way back to the brain. As you've learned in the last episode, we have what's called a convergent focus. That's when we focus on matter, something material. And we have what's called a divergent focus, or a broad focus, or an open focus. And that's when we put our attention or our awareness on energy or nothing but frequency. Most people spend the majority of their time narrowing their focus on matter. But according to the quantum model of reality, reality is both particle and wave, matter and energy. And so in the introduction, in many of the meditations in the work we do, I train people to do meditations, what we called a body parts meditation. And I ask people to rest their attention on different parts of their body and then become aware of the space around their body. And it was tedious in the beginning because I asked them to rest their attention on their nose and then become aware of the space that their nose is in space, and then their eyeballs or the space between their ears, and then the space around their head. And all of that training was preparation for this meditation called the Blessing of the Energy Centers meditation. And it was a practice to begin to master a convergent and a divergent focus. By the same means, when you become aware of the space around your body, the act of doing that begins to slow your brainwaves down from beta brainwave patterns into alpha and theta brainwave patterns. Now, what's the relevance behind that? Well, if you're in beta brainwave patterns, you're separate from the operating system where you can begin to make measurable changes. In other words, when you're in beta brainwave patterns, you're in your conscious thinking neocortex, and you're separate from the autonomic nervous system. So as you begin to open your awareness and relax, you begin to slow your brain waves down, and that is training for this meditation.